the perspective I'll bring is an art and design college. It's in Pasadena. For those of you who are not from Southern California, it's at 2 in the morning. You could probably get there in about 40 minutes. Otherwise, you should use the facilities and buckle your seatbelt. It'll take a while to get there. But it's in Pasadena becomes an important character in the drama that I'm about to tell because of the kinds of partnerships we were able to create there. I want to set the context by letting you know certain things about Art Center and its some of the qualities that we really try to encourage and what we're all about. We are a fully accredited college, 1,800 students, 1,600 of which are undergrad, 200 are graduate students. And Art Center distinguishes itself, I think, in the 30-plus independent colleges of art and design in this country in the sense that it is probably more like Juilliard than any of those other schools, in the sense that there is a strong conservatory spirit. There are students who come there who have developed certain gifts and talents, certain ways of focusing their energies, and their portfolio becomes the most significant element of their admissions. And they go there with a clear commitment and dedication to becoming professionals in the field that they're working in. So the equivalent of Juilliard, if you're a violinist and you have demonstrated your chops, you audition. That audition is parallel to what the portfolio would be at Art Center. You work with working professionals in the field. Art Center faculty are all working professionals. And you are clearly being prepared for a professional career. We have extensive partnerships with industry. Some of you may know that we are although we have a fine and interesting array of art and design programs, we're most famous for automobile design. And it's likely that the car you drove here today, if you did drive a car here today, was designed by an Art Center graduate. The statistic that I heard when I arrived 5 years ago was that 50% of all cars in the world are designed by an Art Center graduate. 2 years ago, I heard it was 80%. So now I just say 5 out of every 4 cars in the world are designed by an Art Center graduate. We partner with industry, and we invite industry to come to campus, and they underwrite studios, and they give our students briefs, and students need to work on real-world briefs from industry. Toyota will come in and say, design the car for this particular market in 2035, and Nestle will come in and say, design sustainable packaging for our premier chocolate experience, or whatever the case may be. And students will work, and they'll work with industry and provide a really interesting context for them to do their work and make those links and bridges to industry as well. But we also have, and I could spend the whole time talking about this, a most brilliant social impact design program called Design Matters. We're an NGO with the United Nations, where the creative imagination is not just to enhance industry, but we send our students to all corners of the world to work with communities, not from a privileged perch in Pasadena at all, but right there with these communities and using their creative imagination to solve real problems with these communities around the world. It is quite extraordinary, the meaning that it brings to a student's life, their college experience, to be able to engage with these communities and make a difference in the lives of real people who absolutely adore them and what they bring is most moving. The third piece of what I want to talk about regarding Art Center that I think is really important and significant, it puts an interesting layer on what we've been talking about as well, is that there's an interesting relationship that I think we believe in that's enormously significant, and that is that the greater degree of skill, the greater the degree of creative freedom. And that it's interesting that, Edward, when you asked what do I think about when I see creativity in action, I thought about improvisation. In fact, both Stephen and I thought about improvisation. And if you think about when improvisation works, and it's a great lesson in this relationship between skill and freedom, because if you listen to a Miles Davis or you listen to a Bobby McFerrin or one of the greatest improvisers of all, in Keith Richards, Keith Jarrett, excuse me. You and I was going to say, and then the best of all. Yeah. The music doesn't come without the skill, and there is this wonderful relationship between the degree of the skill that you're able to build and the discipline and the kind of freedom for creativity that comes from that. You can't improvise in the Keith Jarrett way if you don't have that fundamental skill with the piano. And that relationship, I think, is key, and that relationship informs our educational philosophy. Now, I don't in any way mean to suggest, because a lot of us are focused on K-12 and how important that is, that there has to be a kind of Keith Jarrett level of skill. I'm not saying that. But the relationship between development of skill and what they can do creatively, the confidence that they can get, and that balance that we need to create in the way in which we educate and is, I think, enormously important. I think we need to think about that. And Art Center, fundamentally, we do that. So a lot of what we talk about at Art Center, both in terms of how we design our curriculum, how we design our program, the kind of work we want to do, but also the content of the work we do, has to do with this notion of design thinking that has various definitions, and there are various ways of talking about it. But I think I'd like to focus for our purposes on a couple of things as I build toward this partnership that we've built there that is so significant. I think the most important thing to suggest immediately for us is that design thinking, it really is a way of discovery, a way of finding something new. It's that kind of beyond pretty that design needs to take in the world. That what the designer's real function is not simply to make it look beautiful. And so in so much of industry to date, that has been what it's about. Now that we've developed it to this point, wrap it in a nice package for us and put it out to market. And designers say, no, there's something incredibly important that we have to say from the very beginning, from the moment that an idea is conceived, or maybe even more interesting, right at the moment that a problem is identified. That the designer can bring a way of thinking and a way of doing and a way of creating that opens up possibilities that are necessary from the beginning. We need to build that through. So we teach design thinking, and design thinking is certainly about solving problems, but to Bob's earlier point, it is especially and also about identifying problems. And you'll see in some of the examples that I bring is that the designer can identify and name problems in a way that, with a perspective and an idea and a unique way of grappling with it that I think is unique and different. And that's essential to the design thinking process. I think a lot of people who have written about design thinking talk about abductive logic. I think that's a great way to think about it. It goes back to Charles Sanders Peirce, and he writes, "The abductive suggestion comes to us like a flash. It is an act of insight, although extremely fallible insight. It is true that the different elements of the hypothesis were in our minds before, but it is the idea of putting together what we had never before dreamed of putting together, which flashes the new suggestion before our contemplation." A way of making connection, a way of identifying connection, a way of understanding that to look at something in a way that is a kind of capacity of the human imagination to create a logic of what might be. And that is so at the heart of the design thinking methodology. What's come up a lot today, too, is empathy. There is a profound human element in all of this as well in design thinking. What we like to talk about is the empathetic muscle that we're trying to build and develop for our students. And what that might mean for the education that we offer them. A full third of their units at Art Center has to be in the humanities and sciences. We want them to wrestle with ideas. We want them to wrestle with problems of human experience. We want to build their sensitivity to who they are as human beings in the world, to be able to identify and name these problems, to work with these problems because they understand something about human experience on the deepest level. And then finally, this notion of, and it's all over the building. You walk through Art Center and you see this all day long. Our students know from making that they make to know, that the process of the making itself is a way in which they begin to grapple with and understand and ultimately know something in the fullest possible way. And I don't really mean to suggest that any of this is a better way of thinking, that abductive logic or reasoning is better than, or that making to know is the only way to know. I'm just saying it happens and it goes that way. And there is a kind of knowledge that is produced through the act of making. Partly Dewey's learn by doing, but more than that, because more nuanced than that in all these other ways that I'm talking about gets us to a way of actually creating knowledge. And it's very interesting that as the head of an art and design college, I also want to say we're not just producing creative professionals, we're also actually a knowledge-making institution. And that, again, not better than the research university or the technical school, but we are producing knowledge in a way that I think is important for us to understand. One of the clear and important realities of our student body is that they are increasingly entrepreneurs and interested in starting their own businesses. 20 years ago, Art Center students wanted to graduate and go work for name the company, name the place. Today, they want to be entrepreneurs. Today, they want to be their own. They want to do it and they want to start. And there's enormous pressure on that. There's always been enormous pressure in bringing in a kind of business curriculum, which we do, but it's expanded. And there is an entrepreneurial spirit among our students that is compelling and that really leads us to and necessitates a response from us. The relationship between business and design is huge now. I was telling Bryce last night that the biography on Steve Jobs has probably done more for people to learn about the awareness of design and the relationship of design and business than anything before it. It just popularized the notion of what design brings and what it can be. Again, not just in making the object pretty, but a kind of design thinking process, a way of understanding user experience and understanding human interaction that is so incredibly important. I think that people are really beginning to understand that, at least those who have read the book, because it's all a buzz right now. And it's interesting to note as well, and this fact I just learned recently, that there are any number of VC firms on Sand Hill Road in Menlo Park that will not talk to a startup company unless they have a designer as a senior member of the executive team. That has become so necessary to the way in which people are understanding the success of companies and the competitive advantage that the design sensibility can bring. So we have done a few things. One is we've set up a partnership with the Drucker School of Business. We actually offer an MBA at an art school because our students are interested in what that relationship is all about. So you can get a Master's of Science in Industrial Design and an MBA from Drucker, and that's a very deliberately designed dual degree program. We have relationships with INSEAD in Singapore and south of France. We have a variety of different institutions, always trying to bring that business curriculum and that relationship between design and business together. Again, why are they so interested in design? What does design bring to business? It brings that identification of problems, this user experience, notion of human interface. So the big step that we took was we looked around us and said, we in Pasadena, this extraordinary place. Down the street, it has this institution called Caltech. And Caltech is, I don't know how many of you know it, but it is one of the most mind-blowing places imaginable. And in fact, recently there was a London, I think it was a London Times study on the great universities of the world. It actually did a kind of U.S. News and World Report rankings of the best universities in the world. And Caltech got number one. It was like, that is the best place, according to the various criteria that they were applying. So here are these scientists and engineers that are down the street, and here are these brilliant designers. And here's a world that is saying design and technology are talking to each other in really interesting ways. Why don't we take our students and your students and bring them together, those who have great ideas, understanding that what the perspective of the designer brings and what the perspective of the engineer is going to bring is going to come together, and some rich dialogue is going to take place. And then let's wrap that in good business principles and bring the business community in to mentor these students. And so we started an accelerator. And it is to take these startup companies that are Art Center, Caltech student combined, and to say, we're going to coach you through these mentors who come from the business world, and through the faculty at Caltech, and through the faculty at Art Center, and we're going to help you develop your own startup company and take you to that entrepreneurial level where you're going to be able to go to Sand Hill Road and you're going to be able to pitch your idea at that first level of VC funding. And the energy that has come from the excitement our students have as designers and engineers talking to each other and working together is powerful, it's moving, it's exciting, it's extraordinary. But one of the big surprises is that the investment community and business community has come out of the woodwork to support these and to invest in these companies and to see them thrive and to work with the students. There are 22 accelerators in the Los Angeles basin. We are the only design accelerator. We're the only one that is first and foremost driven by a design sensibility. So let me tell you, just to give you some examples of 3 companies that we've only really done our first class and we're just starting our new one, but 3 companies that have come through. The first one is called MetaMason. And what the students of MetaMason have do, and this was, again, it started with a designer, is that there's 2 interesting technologies that they're interested in. One is how you can use a special kind of scanning of the human face. 5, good. Special kind of scanning of the human face through a technology that's been developed. And 2, a certain kind of soft material that is a product that you can use through 3D printing. And that technology existed, but what the design sensibility brought, the identification of the problem, is sleep apnea masks. Sleep apnea masks that are made of horrible materials that come in small, medium, and large, that do not fit the face. But to take that technology of the softer material, to be able to customize it through the scanning of the face, and then be able to create this product so that it fits and it's comfortable and it makes a difference. It took a designer to identify that problem, and huge numbers who are suffering from sleep apnea here, and the success of that. And this went through our accelerator, and it's getting enormous attention from the VC community too. Stay tuned. I'm excited about that particular. Another company called Anomaly, and this is going to get out of my knowledge system quickly, but it is all about the Internet of Things. It's about a cloud-based rapid detection of threats and opportunities from disparate data streams. So the big thing they're working on now is earthquake identification, where they have the technology now in a split second to be able to identify when an earthquake is going to come. Talk about the connectivity of all things and the Internet of Things. This is part of what this project is all about. Why do they need the designer? They need the designer because, as I was saying earlier, without the human interface, without knowing how human beings can use that, the technology is just the technology. It's just there. The connection to human use and user experience is the key, and that's what they're working on, and that's what they're trying to develop at this particular point. The last one came out of a project a student did where she's from Beirut, and she wanted to create city pride. And she used social networking to do all these interesting things about getting people to make various different statements through social media on why they loved Beirut. And she then put different kinds of sort of kind of treasure hunt ways of getting people around to take photographs of different kinds of things. And then American Apparel caught on to this. And American Apparel said, put our logo in different places. And so they did that. And long story short, people started taking pictures of American Apparel. They had these contests. And there was this enormous buzz about Beirut. And suddenly from this Pasadena Place, this young, brilliant student had put together this civic pride project about Beirut. And she made $500,000 going along with it. Why'd she make $500,000? It's because once you have that buzz and that intensity and that hub, it's a marketing opportunity for business. And American Apparel paid her an enormous amount of money because they wanted to be part of that, and they were bringing people into stores. And so now she's graduated from there, and she's coming in, and she's going to be doing that project in the in the accelerator. So it's wonderful to see what they're doing. It's wonderful to see how the technology and the design worlds are coming together. I guess to conclude this, to pull it together, is that there are implications for, I think, education and K-12 education here that are really important. I think there are really important lessons to learn here. I think there's, as I said earlier, I think I would say that the discipline freedom issue is a really important one. That precise skill and creativity hold a very special relationship. And I think as educators we need to understand that and understand how to target that in the best couple of ways. I think the notion that there is a certain level and a kind of knowledge, and it sounds like there was actually a convening on that, but a way of knowing that comes through making, and a unique way of making, one that we can honor and respect, that seems to be enormously important. I think that the more we can foster these kinds of this kind of cross-pollination, this kind of exchange between the scientific mind and the design mind, the creative mind, and find all those possibilities that actually lead, in this case, to the potential of great companies and economic value, but in the case of our social impact work, it's the same thing that's going on, but to really making the world a better place in a very deep and profound way. Finally, these students are nurtured by their study of human experience and the humanities. That wrestling with the great questions of human experience from a very diverse sources is essential. And any of the work that they do, and any of the success that they have as entrepreneurs, and any of the ways in which they achieve the discovery of new things, that great ecstasy of understanding that they can create as designers, needs them to be educated and wrestle with the great questions of human experience. And that fundamentally has to be part of our conversation as we proceed. Thank you.